Orange Lake, Florida has long been an important regional resource in the north central area of Florida between Gainesville and Ocala. The Twin Lakes, Orange and Lochloosa, were made famous by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, who lived on Cross Creek, the waterway that connects the two. Orange historically was the more shallow lake, and so it supported a more diverse array of wildlife and was a world-class bass fishing destination for many, many years. Much of the habitat in Orange Lake consisted of freshwater marsh, typified by areas of open water, fairly shallow, 2 or 3 feet deep, lily pads, pickerelweed, and other vegetation. And the matrix of habitat types here were highly conducive to wildlife and fish. This is an area, a photo taken in 2009, showing one of the typical freshwater marsh areas in the arm of Orange Lake. Orange Lake also had what were called floating islands. They're areas of muck and vegetation that had floated loose and blew around by the wind. This is a photo of the lake from last year, 2012, during which the water level had dropped. And a lot of those floating islands had moved into the arms and edges of the lake and had dropped to the bottom so that the woody vegetation could take root. This is the same area where the 2009 photo was taken in 2013, and you can see that the woody vegetation that had been on the floating islands has now taken root in the soil. There's a very thick layer of muck, probably 2 or 3 feet deep underneath that, the floating islands and lake bottom. This kind of woody habitat is not conducive to fish or wildlife and is a real problem in the lake. Last year, a pilot project was undertaken by a private landowner on Orange Lake, along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, as well as other agencies. An area was demucked and the woody vegetation was removed, and the idea was to restore the freshwater marsh habitat on the edge of the lake. And you can see from these images and videos from 2013 that the project has been extremely successful. These are migratory blue-winged teal that are have moved into the area and appear to be quite at home. The area restored is only a couple of acres, but you can see that it has already become extremely productive. And this is the habitat that was typical in Orange Lake and the kind of wildlife and fish populations that you would experience before the lake dry down. This is a rare opportunity to take advantage of the dry down to try to restore more areas around the edge of the lake to this level of productivity. This is looking north towards the lake proper from one of the southern arms, and you can see that there's a vast expanse of dog fennels growing on a thick layer of muck. Normally during these drawdowns, wildfires would take care of that. The muck will actually burn, but it's not deemed to be an acceptable solution because of the hazards related to prolonged burns. The restoration needs for the lake as a whole are considerable, and there's some difficulty with funding and jurisdiction that are slowing down the procedure for moving forward. In the meantime, private landowners are beginning to get involved and use our own resources to try to move things along as best we can. The landowners do appreciate the wonderful assistance we've received from the agencies and individuals along the way as we are making our way through this journey, and we're extremely appreciative of the support and the interest that everyone has given to this project. Coming up on an area here that hasn't been restored, you can see the open water on the right. This is a thick layer of muck with dog fennels growing on top of it. If that's removed, that would actually be open water of the kind that you saw the ducks swimming around in. In the background here coming up is a tussock, which is a floating island that has taken root. That's woody vegetation, willows and other trees. And finally, some cypress trees that have been planted to create a proper transition zone between the lake and the uplands surrounding the edges. Each landowner restoration project will follow a prescription that will be written by the agencies and must be followed to the letter. So muck removal, tussock removal, replanting if necessary are all part of the restoration effort and will be clearly outlined, as well as long-term maintenance to make sure that the restoration project can succeed well into the future. Orange Lake is an extremely important stopover on the Atlantic Flyway. The habitat types around the edges of the lake supported large populations of dabbling ducks that would stop here to feed and rest on their migration routes. A lot of the other lakes in Florida have been degraded or altered to the point where this kind of habitat no longer exists. Of particular importance is the habitat for dabbling ducks, shallow water ducks that need to be able to feed in water that's only a few inches deep, and places to rest and loaf through the day. The diving ducks are capable of surviving in deep water, but not the shallow water ducks, and as a consequence, the duck population of Orange Lake has gone from 5,000 or 6,000 down to about 1,000 or less each year. But even more important, the makeup of the kind of duck has shifted from being predominantly dabbling ducks to more of the diving ducks that you see in the open water areas. Drawdown has caused quite a few changes in Orange Lake, and with the water back on the rise again, you can see that if the habitat is restored, that the function of the lake can be increased very dramatically and rapidly. The problem is the areas such as what we're looking at here would not be open water without restoration. They would be areas of muck and woody vegetation or dog fennels that are decaying. They are not supportive to either fish or wildlife, and until they're removed, the lake cannot regain its former level of function and productivity. The big need is for the agencies to be able to get involved and take advantage of this dry down and subsequent dry downs to perform lake restoration efforts. Those are large-scale operations and require a great deal of funding. And we're very hopeful that that will come through and that we'll be able to move forward with some larger scale restorations to restore the lake in the near future. Fortunately, there are things that private landowners can do with the assistance of the agencies for advice and assistance to try to restore at least portions of the lake to its former function. The idea is to remove the woody brush and muck accumulation from the edges of the lake and try to restore it back to its former high level of productivity as an environmental resource of the state of Florida.